My name is Lauren Hayes, and I've always believed silence speaks louder than shouting. The room was so quiet I could hear the faint ticking of my father's old Rolex, the one he used to wear when he'd lecture us about responsibility. Now he sat across from me at the long oak dining table, his jaw tight, eyes narrowed the way they always got before he asked a question he already thought he knew the answer to. "Lauren," he said, sliding a folder across the table. $237,000. What did you do with it? The air left my lungs. My brother, Dylan, leaned back in his chair, that smug little smirk twitching at the corner of his mouth. He'd been waiting for this moment. I felt my hand tremble slightly as I rested it on the cool surface of my wine glass. I stared at the deep red swirl, steady, controlled, the way I'd trained myself to be. Then I spoke, calm, almost detached. 237? I said softly. That's strange. Dylan frowned. Strange? I met his eyes, blue, sharp, too confident. It wasn't 237. He blinked, confused. I took a breath. It was 416,000. The color drained from his face. Dad's brows shot up, his lips parting slightly. The clock ticked again, once, twice, the sound echoing through the heavy silence. And for the first time in years, I saw something in their expressions I'd never seen before. Not anger, not disappointment. Fear. Because they were finally realizing they had no idea who I'd become. I was 22 when I learned that silence could hurt more than shouting. Back then, I still believed that if I worked hard enough, if I smiled through disappointment, stayed patient, stayed the good daughter, my father would see me. He never really did. In our house, Dylan was the golden one. The future of Hayes and Company, the family construction business my dad built from nothing. He was given the truck keys at 16, an office at 20, and a trust fund before he'd ever earned a dime. Me? I got advice. Sweetheart, stability isn't built on dreams. Interior design? That's a hobby, not a career. The words still sting when I think about them. The day everything broke, the morning sunlight was spilling through the kitchen window, and Mom was pretending to wash dishes, her way of staying out of the crossfire. I had brought a proposal, a design pitch for a small renovation business. I'd spent weeks on it, late nights sketching and calculating costs. I was asking for a $30,000 investment from my portion of Grandma's inheritance, money that technically belonged to both Dylan and me. Dad didn't even look at the papers. He just handed them back, eyes cold. "Lauren, you're not ready for that kind of responsibility," he said. Then he turned to Dylan. "You'll manage the accounts. You're better with numbers." It wasn't anger I felt, it was emptiness, like a quiet kind of heartbreak that hums beneath your ribs. Dylan looked at me and smirked. "You can decorate my office when it's done." That was the moment I stopped asking for approval. That night, as I packed a small bag, my mom slipped something into my hand, a tiny silver locket that had belonged to my grandmother. Inside, in her looping handwriting, was a single line. "If they don't open the door, build your own house." I left with $14,000, what I could claim without argument, and my grandmother's words burning in my chest. I didn't cry until I reached the bus station. The city lights blurred through my tears as I whispered to myself, "I'll show them. I don't know how, but I will." And somewhere between that promise and the first dawn of freedom, Lauren Hayes was born again, not as someone's daughter, but as her own foundation. The first few months in Chicago felt like punishment. Cold, expensive, loud, the kind of city that didn't care if you survived or not. I rented a studio apartment so small I could stretch my arms and touch both walls. I worked part-time at a furniture store by day and took online design courses at night. My laptop sat on a stack of paint cans because I couldn't afford a real desk yet. But every time exhaustion whispered, "Go home," I touched that silver locket. It reminded me that home was something I had to build, not return to. My first real break came 6 months later. A woman named Valerie Quinn, a realtor with perfect posture and eyes that missed nothing, came into the store looking for someone to stage a condo for photos. The manager didn't want to give me the chance. "She's too new," he said. But Valerie smiled slightly. Let her try. I poured my entire heart into that condo, stayed until 3 a.m. placing thrifted lamps and borrowed art. When the photos went live, the place sold in 3 days, above the asking price. Valerie called me personally. Lauren, she said, you have something most people don't. You see space the way people want to feel in it. That one job turned into another. And another. Within a year, I was freelancing full-time. Hayes Interiors was born in the corner of my tiny apartment, next to a leaky radiator and a borrowed printer. But it wasn't easy. I worked 14-hour days, skipped dinners, cried when clients ghosted me, and learned how to smile through rejection. I learned business licenses, tax codes, negotiation, all the things Dad said I wasn't ready for. I made mistakes too, expensive ones. A contractor ran off with $9,000 once. I didn't tell anyone. I just rebuilt. 2 years later, I landed my first luxury client, a tech CEO who loved my minimalistic designs. That project alone changed my life. It paid more than I had ever made in a year. And yet, I didn't post about it. Not online. Not in the family group chat. When Dad called every few months asking how I was, I'd just say, doing okay. Because I knew they'd never understand quiet success, the kind that grows in silence, watered by self-belief. By my 5th year, Hayes Interiors wasn't just surviving. It was thriving. A small team, national clients, even a downtown office with my name etched on the glass. I still wore Grandma's locket every day, sometimes under silk blouses, sometimes over my sweaters, as a silent promise to the woman who told me to build my own house. And I had built one. Beautiful, sturdy, and completely mine. But I had no idea that soon, the people who once told me I couldn't would show up on my doorstep, asking for help. It started with a text from my mother. Your father and Dylan are coming by tomorrow. They need to talk. I stared at the message for a full minute, my coffee cooling in my hand. I hadn't seen them in nearly 3 years, not since Dylan took full control of the family finances, and Dad stopped asking how I was doing altogether. Now they were coming to me, and I already knew why. The whispers had reached me through mutual contacts. The family business was drowning. Bad investments, careless spending, and one very ill-advised luxury expansion that never launched. So I didn't panic. I prepared. The next morning, my office gleamed, clean lines, warm light spilling across the marble floors. On the wall behind my desk hung a framed blueprint of my first renovation project, the one no one believed in. And on the glass shelf beside it, my grandmother's locket caught the sun. When they arrived, Dylan looked smaller somehow. The confidence that once filled every inch of him had cracked around the edges. Dad looked tired, still proud, but uncertain, the kind of man who wasn't used to walking into rooms he didn't control. Lauren, he said, trying for his old tone. You've done well for yourself. I smiled.
Thank you, Dad.
Please sit. They exchanged glances before settling into the leather chairs across from my desk. Then came the real reason they were here. Dad cleared his throat. There seems to be some confusion regarding the family accounts. When your grandmother passed, she left $237,000 for both of you to manage. Dylan says you took it. I finished for him, my voice calm. Dylan shifted uncomfortably. It wasn't supposed to be just yours, Lauren. You said you'd invest part of it. I leaned back, folding my hands in my lap. Do you remember what you told me that day, Dylan? You said I could decorate your office with my share.
His jaw tightened.
That was years ago. I know. I opened the folder sitting on my desk and slid it toward them. Inside were printed statements, property deeds, investment summaries, and company holdings. Dad's eyes scanned the pages. He stopped halfway through, his brow furrowing. $416,000, he whispered. Dylan blinked. What? I nodded once. That's what the $237,000 became. I turned it into $416,000 before I ever took a dime of profit. That money helped me buy this office, build my team, and open 2 new branches. Hayes Interiors isn't just a design firm anymore. It's a real estate and property brand. I own 60% of every space we create. For a long moment, no one spoke. The air felt heavy with realization and something like shame. Dad's voice was quieter when he spoke again. You did all this by yourself? No, I said softly. I did it without you. That's different. Dylan swallowed hard, color draining from his face. He finally looked at me, not as the little sister he used to dismiss, but as someone who had built something he couldn't control. Lauren, he began, but the words fell apart halfway through. I stood, walking to the wide glass window behind my desk. The city stretched out below, a skyline I had conquered one small project at a time. When you both thought I was wasting my money, I said quietly, I was investing in what you called a hobby. And now, that hobby employs 14 people, pays for their health insurance, their kids' schools. Dad's hands trembled slightly as he closed the folder. There was pride there, buried under regret. I misjudged you, he said finally. I turned back to him, meeting his eyes. No, Dad. You just underestimated what happens when a woman gets tired of being told she can't. For the first time, he didn't argue. He just nodded slowly, the Rolex ticking softly again in the silence. And in that moment, the power shifted, quietly, irrevocably, to me. For a long time after the reveal, none of us spoke. Dylan stared at the floor. My father looked older than I remembered, not just in his face, but in the weight of his posture. Pride had always made him tall, now it made him heavy. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. Lauren, the company's in trouble. Dylan made some mistakes and… I know, I said softly. I've been following the filings. 3 delayed contracts. 2 unpaid loans. The new office in Dallas that never opened. Their eyes snapped up to me in surprise. I smiled slightly. You're not the only one who reads the fine print. Dad sighed. We could use your help. A consultant, maybe an investor. I walked around the desk and sat on its edge, crossing one leg over the other. For years, I'd stood on the other side of men who told me what I couldn't do. Now, they were waiting for my permission to move forward. Before we talk about help, I said, let's talk about conditions. Dylan looked wary. Conditions? Yes, I said, my tone calm but firm. Because if I invest, it won't be out of guilt. It'll be a partnership. One where I'm respected. Dad leaned forward, listening. Condition 1, I began. Dylan, you step down as operations head. You've had 6 years of control and nothing to show for it but debt. If you want to stay involved, you'll work under someone who knows what they're doing. Maybe even under me. His mouth opened in protest, but I raised a hand. You don't get to argue. Leadership isn't entitlement, it's accountability. He fell silent, jaw tight. Condition 2, I continued, turning to Dad. You start acknowledging that your daughter is capable. Not lucky, not emotional, not stubborn. Capable. You can disagree with me, but you won't dismiss me. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the air conditioner. Dad nodded slowly. That's fair. And condition 3, I said, softening my voice. You both rebuild what you broke, not just the business, but this family. You'll be transparent. No more secrets, no more backroom decisions. We work together or not at all. Dylan looked up, his expression shifting. Guilt, then something like remorse. I didn't think you'd ever talk to us again, he admitted quietly. I smiled faintly. For years, I thought I wouldn't either. But people change when they have to. The question is, will you? Dad's eyes glistened a little, though he'd never admit it. You sound just like your grandmother, he said. I touched the locket around my neck, feeling the cool metal against my skin. I finally understood what she meant, I said softly. If they don't open the door, build your own house. And now that I have one, I decide who gets to come in. Neither of them spoke after that. But the silence wasn't tense anymore. It felt possible, like the beginning of something new, built not on control, but respect. 6 months later, the world felt quieter. Dylan kept his word. He stepped down from operations, stayed on as project coordinator, and for the first time in his life, listened more than he spoke. He still stumbled, still carried his pride like an overstuffed briefcase, but he was learning. Dad surprised me the most. He visited my office twice a week, not to supervise but to ask questions.
Real ones.
How did you negotiate this deal? What software are you using for design plans? He even introduced me once, at a client dinner, as my daughter, the businesswoman. Those 5 words meant more than any apology ever could. The company started to recover. Slowly, imperfectly, but honestly this time. I invested not all at once, and not because they asked, but because I wanted to see if rebuilding was possible when respect replaced resentment. One evening, as I closed my laptop, I noticed my reflection in the window, the skyline behind me glowing gold in the sunset. That's when I saw it clearly. I wasn't the same woman who left home with a duffel bag and a dream. I was the woman who proved that independence doesn't mean isolation. It means choosing peace over approval. A soft knock on the door pulled me out of thought. It was Mom, holding a small box wrapped in cream paper. "She wanted you to have this," she said quietly. Inside was a folded note, yellowed, fragile, written in the same looping hand that once changed my life. "Lauren, you've built your house. Now fill it with love, not walls." I pressed the note to my chest, the city lights flickering behind me like stars I'd finally reached. Later that night, as I sat on my office balcony with a cup of tea, I thought about everything, the pain, the struggle, the silence, the moment my father asked that question. $237K, what did you do with it? And I smiled to myself, because now I could finally answer. I built something worth more than money. I built myself. I looked up at the skyline, the night breeze brushing my hair, and whispered the words I wished my younger self could have heard back then. You don't owe them explanation. You owe yourself evolution. The city shimmered below, my city, my house, my story, standing tall, strong, and entirely my own.